A very warm good morning to all present today on the second day of e-conference VIJIGISHU 2020, Reimagining South Asia Multilateralism in the Post-COVID World, conducted by Amity Institute of International Studies. It's my pleasure to have with us our Head of Department, Professor Dr. Nagalakshmi M. Raman, Chair of today's session, Professor Sanjay Kumar Bhardwaj, panelists, dear colleagues and students. Today, we begin our technical session 3, titled as Foreign Policies of South Asian Countries in Post-COVID-19 World. Personally, it's my honor to have Professor Sanjay Kumar Bhardwaj sir to chair the session, as he has been my teacher, guide and mentor in JNU. Welcome, sir. So Professor Dr. Sanjay Kumar Bhardwaj is a professor at the Center for South Asian Studies, School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. He has 20 years of experience in academics and research. His areas of expertise and specializations are India's foreign policy with special reference to its neighbors, mainly Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, and China. Bangladesh, identity, politics, and foreign policy issues. South Asia, history of partition, political security, socio-cultural, environment, border and maritime security related issues, regional and sub-regional cooperation, India's energy security with special reference to neighbors and extended neighbors of Southeast, West, and Central Asia. Professor Bhardwaj has also held various administrative positions, ranging from being a proctor at JNU, director at Energy Studies Program, JNU, to chairperson at Center for South Asian Studies, JNU. He has received many awards, honors, and national international fellowships. He has been a fellow at Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan, Tokyo, South Asia Scholarship Foundation, Bangkok, Asia Research Center, London School of Economics and Political Science, UK, Chinese Academy of Social Science, Beijing, University of Delaware, United States of America. Professor Bhardwaj has to his credit around 3 books and many articles in best peer-reviewed journals. To name recent few ones, India's Neighborhood First Policy, a study of India-Bangladesh relations. It's a working paper in Asiatic Society of Bangladesh, Dhaka, 2018. India-Vietnam Energy Cooperation, Policy Issues and Orientation, Center for Indian Studies, Ho Chi Minh National Academy of Politics, Vietnam, 2019. India-Bangladesh Energy Cooperation, Management and Policy Issues, BEI Journal, Dhaka. Thank you. Now I would like to request Arlene to introduce our panelists for today's session.
Thank you, ma'am. Today we have the honor of the following presenters. Dr. Aditi Priya, Assistant Professor at Manipal University, Jaipur, India. Dr. Begum Burak, Associate Researcher at the French Institute of Anatolian Studies, Turkey. Mr. Abhigyan Guha, Postgraduate Student at Jadavpur University, India. Ms. Asta Chadha, Research Scholar at Asia Pacific University, Japan. And Ms. Sandhya Rani, Research Scholar at CSAS JNU, New Delhi. And also, scholars who have joined us through Zoom and are watching us live on
I'm
Facebook.
just intervening, beta. There's one more presenter we are having, Mr. Adil Qayyum Mullah from University of Kashmir.
We welcome you, sir. And we are extremely glad to witness your presence with us today. Now, without further ado, Sir, Professor Sanjay Bhardwaj, I would kindly request you to take the session forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction, Professor Dr. Nagalakshmi, that you have given a very humble introduction of mine. Thank you very much. I'm glad to be part of this international conference. I also extend my thanks to Amity University, particularly Dr. Siris Pathak. I'm glad that he has invited me to chair this session. And I'm also thankful Dr. Pramod Jaiswal. Pramod had been very close to me while he was pursuing research in JNU. And of course, I also congratulate NICE for organizing these nice seminars that had been educated to the people all over the world, and bringing all the all the the participants from different corners of the world. They are coming and speaking. So thank you very much. Let me know for one thing only, that how much time one speaker has. It's I think you're asking 25
So
minutes.
15 minutes to 20 minutes.
Oh, 15 minutes. Okay. 15 minutes. Okay. Thank you very much. So I will be stick on the time, because otherwise Siris and Pramod would ask me to to exit. Meanwhile, this session is very interesting about foreign policies of South Asian states in post-COVID-19 world. Basically, foreign policies of South Asian states. While I was going through with the presenters, I did not find that these are the relations, or there are interstate relations within the South Asian states, or it is part of India's neighborhood policy, or Nepal's India policy, or Bangladesh India policy. It is not. I think it's very much they are taking that what kind of foreign policy they are pursuing, not only within South Asia, but other world also, because the papers are on Africa, the papers are on other areas, as Indian Ocean, and all these areas had been adopted, and the media profile in India, like this paper, is also there. Very interestingly, I do find that I think what they are, what the organizers are looking in this session, while they have formulated foreign policies of South Asian South Asian countries. I think they are looking at what are the domestic constructs of while they are making foreign policy with the external world, including either India is making its foreign policy, what are the social domestic constituents, what are the regional systemic pressure, what are the international systemic pressures, how the different constituents influence the foreign policy making. And it is the trend, I think it's emerging in all the South Asian countries. You take the case of Nepal. What is happening, if you will talk Nepal, then you will find different constituents within Nepal, that some of them, they are very, they are still believing in the old classes, or they are still believing in the roti betis relations, or they are still believing that yes, India and Nepal had been together historically, we had marched together historically. But there are other sections, they believe that yes, now we are in 21st century, so the old classes are not they faded away, and we are in the realist world. We are with the so we should accept the geopolitics, and instead of going with the historical and retrospective ties between the two countries, they should take an independent approach. And now China has become a factor. China has become a source of balancing India in South Asia, and Nepal had developed very closer ties with China. I'm just giving these kind of backgrounds so that you can have a better approach. So I think what they are looking, what are the domestic constraints, what are the domestic construct, or what are the domestic approaches that while you are making your foreign policy with the external world, or within South Asian states. So we have I think 5 papers. 5 papers we have in this 5-6 papers we have in this seminar. So I think I should go one by one. First, I'll go with Aditi Priya. Aditi, she is going to speak on COVID-19 and human security in South Asia. It's very good, like human security index that had been developed, and how that states, they are basically performing differently. If I compare with the human development index of Bangladesh, or human development of index of India, there are Bangladesh is doing far better than India in recent past. If you will see that Sri Lanka, the Human Development Index of Sri Lanka was far better earlier, but now it's not that much because of the internal conflicts. So I would be happy to invite Dr. Aditi Priya. Aditi, are you there?
Aditi Priya? So let me connect personally to Aditi Priya till the time we.
Okay,
Yes,
shall I
yes.
go the next with the next speaker? Okay, now the next speaker, that would be very interesting. That media profile in India. You know, it's a debate. What is the role of media? Media, how do you find media? Media is an instrument or a vehicle of change, or media as an instrument to maintain status quo in the society. And you know, now there is a lot of debates about the media controlled by the corporate houses and all that. I think it would be a very interesting paper. I asked Begum Burak. Begum Burak is going to speak on media profile in India.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? All of you can hear me.
Yes,
okay.
yes,
Thanks a lot.
Yes,
Thank you very much for your presenting me, and I want to also thank you to Dr. Suresh and his institute and Nietzsche Nepal also. I want to share my screen, so I'm gonna, I think, press this place, share. So can you see my presentation? Yes. Can you see my screen right now?
Yes, it's perfectly visible.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Today my topic is about media profile in India. Normally, yes, media, when we say media, it's like related with domestic political issues, but media has a big role in the formulation of foreign policy issues as well. So first of all, just a moment. I must say that we all know that media plays a key role in liberal democratic regimes, and there are many functions of media actors in enhancing democracy. Mass media shapes the way facts are viewed, and a free and plural media is the safeguard of a healthy democracy. We can say that media holds very significant functions in a democratic regime, like giving information, providing society a public forum, mobilization, and democratic education. In this presentation, I aim to answer two main questions. One of them is, how is the nature of media in India? So providing some information about media actors in India, and what kind of relationship does media in India have in political sphere? India has a developing media scene with thousands of outlets in multiple languages, and throughout most of its history, India has a multi-party parliamentary democracy, and in this regard, media has a key role in Indian political system. And yeah, I will talk about some print media actors like newspapers. I'll talk about some televisions, and also the structure of the media ownership and online media. As I said before, media has an important role in democracies. So first of all, I'm going to talk a little bit about the theoretical framework about the role of media in modern politics. And then I'm going to cover Indian media and the role of Indian media in the political sphere. Since the 18th century, Indian media has been active. And we can say that India has a media profile that has been one of the oldest media profiles in the world. There must be internal and external diversity in media actors for a healthy agenda setting mechanism in the countries. The political and economic structure of the media can have different effects in different countries. In terms of a theoretical basis, I want to talk about a little bit about Noam Chomsky and Noam Chomsky and Herman's book about manufacturing consent, we can say that media has a big role in making public show consent towards the events. In this regard, media plays a key role in both shaping domestic and foreign policy perceptions in the eyes of the public. Also media plays a key role in informing the masses and for making them giving healthy reactions in terms of both domestic and foreign policy issues. Acting as an independent political communication tool between different groups in society, media educate citizens in election times, increasing their political awareness and also increasing their other kinds of information, as you all know. So Indian media profile, we can say that in the early 1920s, radio broadcasting began in India. Based on data from the last year, there are around 900 private satellite TV stations, around half of them devoted to news coverage. In 2009, India was among the fourth largest television broadcast stations in the world with almost 1,400 stations. As of 2018, there were over 100,000 publications registered with the Register of Newspapers for India. India is the second largest newspaper market in the world, so it's very important in terms of print media. India has a large number of newspapers with a circulation over 240 million copies. In terms of readership, Dainik Jagran is the most popular Hindi daily, and Dainik Bhaskar is the second most popular Indian newspaper. In terms of radio broadcasting, we know that India keeps a state monopoly in radio news coverage. Radio broadcasting was initiated in 1927. However, it became a state responsibility in 1930. With regards to digital media, we know that in the recent years, the online media and digital media has become much more important in Indian political and media landscape. For example, in 2008, India has used social media for the first time at the time of Mumbai attack, and in 2009 national elections, social media was used in India. Media profile in India. The media giant of India, Times of India, was under Samir Jain rule. The most important feature of this newspaper is to gain market share by decreasing the sales price of the newspaper when it enters new markets, thanks to its financial power. The Times of India is headquartered in Mumbai, India's financial center, but the newspaper is also printed and distributed in print shops in other states. It should be noted that India's media landscape has changed over 5 years, and self-censorship has also come into the fore. Published news items disappeared sometimes from the websites because of censorship. Important TV and radio channels. I have made a list of some important media actors, like in English, for example, CNN News, New Delhi TV in both English and Hindi language, or like Zee TV, Radio 1, Radio Mirchi. These are commercial radios. If you want, you can reach this presentation on my Academy Edu profile also. And here is a graphic. It shows the history of mass media in India. We can see that in 70s, Bengal Gazette, India's first newspaper, was founded. In 1947, Press Trust of India was founded. In 1992, for the first time, private TV channels came to the market. Also in Turkey, in the early 1990s, first private TV channels were established. Also in early 2000, India allowed foreign direct investment in media sector. In 2011, we saw digitalization of broadcasting services. Also, as you see down, for example, in 2018, India dropped by 2 ranks on the World Press Freedom Index to 138. So unfortunately, just like my country, India is not a good registration of free media. I think based on the on some data by the international actors. Here we can see the internet users in India. We can see a steady increase since 2015. Internet users has been rising in a steady way. India has 574 million active internet users. As of 2019, India is the second largest online market behind China. So this number is really important. China is the first, has the first online market in digital media, and India comes after China. It is estimated that by December 2020, by the end of this year, there will be around 639 million active internet users in India. The role of media in Indian media profile. I want to make a reference to the Prime Minister of India. Once he said that I want this government to be criticized. Criticism makes democracy strong. Democracy cannot succeed without constructive criticism. These words were said by Prime Minister Modi after he came to power 6 years ago. As Modi faced a weakened economy and some tensions across the country, sometimes, like the other countries, political authority has exercised some restrictions on media freedom. On the other hand, while discussing the role of media in Indian political life, we should say that India media ownership lacks an effective regulatory regime, and the administration sometimes uses advertising campaigns in order to exercise some control over the media. For example, there was advertising was used as a tool for restricting some media actors, which were critical of the government. When media actors in India sometimes do not produce news in line with government's views. Sometimes the government cuts advertising revenues to punish the media actors. Just a moment, sorry. We saw this in some biggest English language newspapers like the Hindu and the Telegraph. Until the 1980s and 1990s, English newspapers published in India were mostly concerned with national affairs, and they were dominant in terms of circulation, technology, and earnings, as well as shaping the elite press. However, Hindu newspapers made a big leap forward both in numbers and with local print and circulation. Today, newspapers are read more than ever before in the country. It is seen that political problems are covered intensively in both local and regional newspapers. It is not coincidental that India's move from the center of politics from New Delhi to regional centers coincides with the time when the press in mother tongue started to gain strength. So the press in Hindi language has also begun to be strong in the last years. Also, while the English press is perceived as a model in developing world, these newspapers, also Hindu newspapers met with incredible support from the Hindu nationalist movements. As concluding remarks, I can say that in order to empower democratic rule in a country, a free and independent press is required, and in modern democracies, government policies are generally shaped by members of the society. In this regard, media plays a key role, and there's a constant relationship between the ruling elites and those who are governed. So also media in India plays a key role for making democracy stronger in the country. And I want to thank everybody for listening to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Begum Burak, for making
Thanks.
very nice presentation on media profile in India, and you had pointed out many aspects that how how the ideology or the had dominates and shapes the mindsets of the people. You have given Chomsky and the example that how they are looking and how they are hegemonizing the narratives within the society. Of course, there are questions, as I said, that either media is a vehicle of change, or either or the media is maintaining status quo. But very important question that you have raised about the independent media. I think what was most important to look into or examine that the role of independent media, that how much the media is independent from corporate house, how much media is independent from the ideological construct, or advancing the interest of one class or one people, or it is playing the role of as pro establishment or anti-establishment. That is very important aspects of that. But I would also add that I think what is most important that you could have included in your presentation is that and that is very serious concern, particularly in India, that there is a decline of scholarship within media. And that decline of the scholarship has become a fundamental factors, that the media has become partisan media or pro-established media or anti-establishment media rather than independent media. So I think what is most important aspects that need to understand that there is a serious declinement of scholarship within media and print media or electronic media. One more thing I think would have been very important if you would included it, that the impact of media, that what are the impact of media on policy makers or decision makers or on decision makings, or what are the impacts on society and polity in large that has having in India. And they are basically they really become the vehicle of change, or they are protecting interest of one class. So thank you very much for making nice presentation. I now request the second speaker is Mr. Abhigyan Guha. Series this Aditi
Yes,
Priya has.
yes, sir. Dear Chair, sir, Dr. Aditi Priya has joined.
Okay. Now I ask Dr. Aditi Priya. She is going to speak on COVID-19 and human security in South Asia. I would be very happy to hear. Aditi Priya, you can go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. And I'm so sorry for joining late. I couldn't join because of some technical glitch. I hope I am audible.
Yes, very much.
Okay, sir. I'll share my screen first. Hope my screen is visible.
Yes.
So the topic of my presentation is COVID-19 and human security in South Asia. So here I would like to mention that human security as a concept is too vast. So I'll be covering only two aspects of human security, that is food security and health security. So ever since the end of 1918-22 Spanish flu, which was a global pandemic, the world did not witness such a large scale and multi-dimensional human disaster. South Asian region have been severely impacted by the COVID-19, especially the countries like India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. Although preventive measures have been taken by the South Asian countries, yet it had a profound impact on every sector of human activity. In particular, livelihoods and public health system have been worst affected by this deadly disease. Hence, the objective of the study is to understand the implication of COVID-19 for human security in order to fathom the emerging theoretical and policy issues in the region. So I have started my presentation with security. So security in general means safety from and protection against damage. In international relations, since ages, security has been understood something related to safety from and protection against military threats. This is considered as the traditional notion of security under the realist construct or realist paradigm of security. However, there was change in the phase with the non-traditional aspect of security, where we started studying the challenges to the survival and well-being of people, and something different was studied, that is those threats which did not arose out of the military threats, in spite the non-military threats. Security as a concept, if we study in the international relations, so it can be situated within three major frameworks, that is national security, international security, and human security. National security means safety of the citizens of a nation from foreign attack, whereas international security, as Barry Boozan defines as more than a study of threats, but also study of which threats that can be tolerated and which require immediate action. These two approaches of security studies, if we see under the international security, are state-centric. Human security, however, is different from these two approaches, that is national and international security. Human security gives primacy to the interest of the individuals or the community over the nation states. That is why it is called as human-centric. Now, COVID-19 has emerged as a non-traditional security threat, which has challenged the notion of human security. So here it is very imperative to understand the concept of human security. So human security as a concept is relatively new. As we all know, till the end of Cold War period, security was perceived largely in terms of military power. After the end of the Cold War, the nature of security has changed from traditional to non-traditional, with the occurrence of transnational terrorism, human rights violation, deadly diseases, poverty, hunger, natural disasters, etc. These phenomena have compelled the world leaders to think about security from a different perspective. In this respect, human security as a different aspect of security became a policy and academic debate in early 1990s, which concerned itself to the individual-centric issues. So the first systematic definition of human security came in 1994 by the United Nations Development Programme in its Human Development Report. The report defines human security from two aspects. The first, safety from such chronic threats as hunger, disease, and repression. And second, it means protection from sudden and hurtful disruptions in the pattern of daily life, whether in homes, in jobs, or in communities. Thus, if we see, it describes human security as freedom from fear and freedom from want. Consequently, the Human Development Report listed 7 essential components of human security, that is economic security, food security, health security, environmental security, personal security, community security, and political security. The world today is in such a situation where we all are facing the most severe of the national non-security threat, that is coronavirus pandemic. So here it is important to describe what is a pandemic. So according to the World Health Organization, a pandemic is the worldwide spread of a new disease. Food, yes. As I said earlier, I'll be discussing two important aspects of human security, that is food security and health security. So here I'm going to present about COVID-19 and its impact on the food security in South Asia. So what is food security? So food security as a concept of debate amongst the policymakers and academicians has evolved in the last few decades. The basic issue of debate has been what constitutes food security and how it can be ensured at the global, regional, and individual levels. So Food security as a concept means that all people at all times have physical and economic access to adequate amounts of nutritious, safe, and culturally appropriate foods which are produced in an environmentally sustainable and socially just manner, and that people are able to make informed decisions about their food choices. This has been described in the food security news by the person named Staff. So food security, therefore, we can say that is the combination of three elements, that is food availability, food access, and food utilization. Food availability means availability of food in a consistent manner. Food access means acquiring adequate quantity of food consistently through purchase or other means. And food utilization means the food which has been consumed should provide nutritional values. However, if we see in the South Asia, ensuring all the above three elements of food security is a very difficult task, considering the fact the population of the region is too large. South Asian region, which constitutes 1.89 billion people, make up for almost 1/4 of the world's population. These countries have been the worst affected regions in matter of food security due to COVID-19. However, it is wrong to say that it got affected just because of the COVID-19. COVID-19 security in South Asia. The major reasons which were already there for such a sorry state have been rising poverty, unemployment, industrialization, bad weather condition upon which our agriculture depends, higher food prices, and unstable income amongst others. This has also been, there has also been malnutrition children leading to world stunted children in this region. So South Asian countries have been vulnerable to climate change and global warming. And COVID-19 pandemic actually exposed these vulnerabilities of food security in South Asia and made the situation worse. The pandemic challenged all the three elements of food security, uh, and these were challenged, these were severely impacted in South Asia due to lockdown, disruption of transportation, business closures, and collapse of global markets due to COVID-19, which was required at that point of time. The availability of the food has been severely impacted due to the disrupted transportational system, as the produce could not be either sold or poorly paid. So also here it is important to mention that it also got impacted due to panic buying by the affluent people, where few people, those affluent people, bought the food items and stored it, and others who could not afford could not do anything. Another reason was unstable income of the people in the South Asian region, mostly in the unorganized sector. And we have seen that in the unorganized sector, people lost their jobs, and they could not think of providing food to their people. Though government tried it through various sources, but it was limited. Also, if we see South Asia, so South Asian as a region, here the remittances constitute a major part of the economy. This remittances also got severely impacted due to COVID-19. And according to World Bank estimates, this remittance is going to be, South Asia is going to lose 22.1% of remittance in 2020 due to COVID-19. So when people cannot afford availability or accessibility of food, utilization in terms of nutritional food is actually a dream a dream for people. So since people, due to pandemic, they lost their job and could not even secure 2 meals a day, and they were forced to stay at home, it became difficult for them to provide food security, to nutritional security to the people. So what could be the what needs to be done in such a pandemic if it happens in future, or what could be done in the post COVID world, or in the present scenario. First, the analyst and the policymakers should engage themselves more upon the concept of food security as a component of national security. Second, also the policy debate should consider as a reference. Policy debate should consider individual as a referent object of security. Uh, However, till now, security was in terms of security, individual is actually overlooked. Second, in South Asia, agriculture should be prioritized in the national budget. Also, sufficient loans with lower interest rates, agricultural subsidies, seeds distribution, and other aiding machinery need to be distributed among the farmers. Third, self-sufficiency is required. Uh, Fourth, it is very essential to stabilize the food system and keep the trade open locally, regionally, and globally. Fifth, sustainable economic growth is the need of the hour. For this, resources should be utilized in such a manner that in case of such pandemics in the future, people do not get worried. Sixth and the last point, social security schemes need to be social security schemes such, including the food transfer program should be launched, keeping in mind the present scenario. Coming to the COVID-19 Act and its impact on health security in South Asia. So health is directly connected to food. Though health security has been an important subject of study, yet it has been understudied. COVID-19 had actually shown the world that even the most powerful countries in the world could become
Aditi, you please wind up in two.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sure. Helpless when faced with such diseases. Thus, it becomes pertinent to investigate the health security implications of COVID-19 in South Asia. So, here I would like to define what is health. So, health is a state of complete physical, social, mental well being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. But this term has been more used in Western conception, and if we take it to South Asian conception, then health security could be defined could be defined from the perspective of infectious diseases, HIV and AIDS, and other problems arising through health challenges like air pollution, growing food adulteration, malnutrition, hunger, etc. I'll sir wind it up in 2 minutes. The state of in my research paper, I have critically analyzed the state of healthcare in South Asia, where I have shown that in South Asia, already malnourished people their maternal mortality rate and infant mortality rate has been staggering. For the reason there has been growing health insecurity in societies, therefore, and poor health security prevails in South Asia. Here, the elites can access health services while the majority cannot. This has been because of one of the reasons that there has been privatization of healthcare sector, which has led to the growing inequalities in the region. South Asia, which was already vulnerable in terms of health security, COVID-19 has actually exposed exposed its vulnerability. So what needs to be done again? So individuals should be considered as a referent object of security, first thing. Second, there should be investment on the health. Third, disease surveillance system should be improved in humans and animals. In this regard, more investment needs to be ensured in medical science, research and technology. Inequality should be addressed in a new manner. And also, last point, that the role of the scholars, researchers should be like investigating more about this concept. So conclusion, for the betterment of the people and the region, health security and food security needs to be prioritized in the domain of security studies in the South Asian region. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much, Aditi, for making very comprehensive presentation on human security in context of COVID-19. You have raised very important aspects that particularly the debates had shifted from state-centric notion of security to the individualistic centric notion of security, and that you have categorically pointed out many aspects of human security, where, like, you talk about the freedom from want and freedom from fear, and there you also try to link it with the present in the present context, that the large sections of the society is working are informal workers, or they are engaged in informal sector. Particularly, if I give the data that about 2 billion people in the world are in informal sector. Almost 60% of workforce is in informal sector. And there you do find that there are inequalities in the society, had also been categorically vigilant in this COVID-19. So you had made very comprehensive, and you covered all the aspects, but particularly you focused on two aspects. One is the food security, and then the health security. Of course, these are the important issues, that health security and food security. Of course, environmental security is one of the also a concern that we will face in future. We will not alert ourselves today. So I think what is the debates that you are trying to bring is that there is global commons, and in the global commons are basically concerns for global south. That is very important, that global commons are concerned for global south, because the global south is comparatively less developed than the global north. So I think we need to understand, we need to take strong measures to come out with these human security threat. There, I think one debate is coming out from your presentation as well, that the how do you define power? The power you defined as in the militaristic sense, or you define power in the source of economic power or the resource power. That is very important, and I think this pandemic has exposed that the military power is not, you can't define a state by military power. The state is, the powerful state is that, or power of that state is that who can provide the social security to their people, and or you can say, instead of mutual assured destruction, you need to have mutual assured survival, that how we can survive all together. So you had basically very categorically pointed out many aspects. I had 2-3 submissions also, that what is need to be done. I think in this there is a debate again, that and the debate has been trapped in the prism of nationalism, that we had made the state as a surveillant state, and we are tightening our borders, and the supply chain has been disrupted. I think keeping South Asia into mind, and the geographical construct of South Asia, that is part of common ecological organic system. So we should focus more in the sense of developing a cooperative security mechanism rather than the nationalistic security mechanism, and that would cooperative security mechanism would help us to come out with the problems of global commons, or food security, and environmental security, and health security. What is my point is I think for that, what state has to do, that states need to should not take the austerity measures to come out these problems, to focus more on research in the health sector, to focus more on research in environment and other sectors. I think that a progressive taxation system would help the state to generate the resources, and austerity measures and
cut down of the budgets from the education and health sector would not help the state. So I think we need a more resilient, more cohesive society rather than an individualistic, nationalistic discourse what we are facing today in South Asia. We need a more cooperative, we should develop a cooperative security mechanism there that would be based on win-win situation. So thank you very much for making this wonderful presentation, Aditi. Now
Thank you, sir.
I invite next speaker is Mr. Abhigyan Guha. Abhigyan Guha is going to speak on decoding the post-pandemic geopolitical jigsaw puzzle, a macroscopic insights from all Indian perspective, an Indian perspective. Yes, Abhigyan Guha, a very ambitious topic that you have. Please, I'll be happy to listen.
Thank you so much, sir. Am I audible? Okay, very
Yes.
good morning to one and all present here. So in my paper, I've used my expositional license to make a series of broad-based normative speculations on certain empirical observations. Now, essentially, a comprehensive assessment of the ontological indicators has been done while tracing the future picture of the global order as a consequence of rebalancing, with a special emphasis on South Asia and on Indian foreign policy, about how the security and strategic architecture and the geopolitical landscape is going to be in the post-pandemic world. So putting things into perspective, signaling a paradigmatic shift in the structural architecture and constellation of powers in the international system, the COVID-19 pandemic has altered leadership footprints in the present liberal international order that is predicated on the attributive elements of national sovereignty, economic liberalism, and rule-based multilateralism. Accompanied with the hegemonic assertiveness of China, with its demonstration of strategic and economic capabilities, and the unilateral withdrawal of US, demonstrated in its unwillingness to project itself as a global policeman, an architect of global trade, a G0 de facto world system has crystallized itself in an environment of leadership vacuum. In a dystopian atmosphere of trust deficit, erosion of multilateral institutional arrangements, ascendancy of illiberal populism, rise of protectionist policymaking instincts and authoritarian political values, the fulcrum of the post-1945 liberal international order is undergoing a plethora of cyclical and structural transformation, germinating an existential crisis for the architectonic systems of international cooperation, collaboration, and solidarity. Confronted with negative catalysts like economic slowdown, unresolved social tensions, debilitation of social contract, secular decline of dynamic designs of democratic political systems, rise of xenophobic ultranationalist political formations, increasing securitization and mobilization on the closures of borders, the pandemic has exacerbated pre-existing geopolitical tensions by deepening a series of cleavages and accentuating hostility on a global scale. Now, against the backdrop of comprehensive degradation, India is not an exception and has been plagued with multifaceted and multidimensional challenges, ranging from its economic breakdown in a Keynesian tailspin fashion, skyrocketing unemployment, migrant labor crisis, widening economic inequality, political mudslinging in a climate of polarized pluralism that has far-reaching ramifications for every sphere of collective life, extending to the security and strategic frontiers. The pandemic has accelerated ongoing geopolitical trends in the international arena, from sharpening trade, economic, and technological decoupling in the pre-existing geopolitical spat between US and China, to exposing the retreat of globalization, the rise of economic nationalism embedded in an autarkic nostalgia, and highlighting the fledgling institutional arrangements for regional cooperation, especially in the form of SAARC in South Asia, that has proved detrimental for regional stability in the Indo-Pacific region. To make things worse, the recent robust, pushy foreign policy decisions of India has bred gratuitous provocation and soured its bilateral relations with its immediate neighbors, from straining its enduring bonhomie with Nepal, the lack of generosity expressed with Sri Lanka, behaving unnecessarily impertinently with Bangladesh, to the culmination of hostility under the rise of brinkmanship with China and Pakistan, while reasserting its territorial claims aggressively. Further, the inward-looking reactionary, inconsequentialist attitude of India's foreign policy making infrastructure with blatant disregard for deliberation has led to a series of tactical, strategic, and diplomatic miscalculations with no enough bandwidth in the decision-making establishment. The immense economic burden will automatically play out in India's national security parameters, and the ability to play national security cards and to make its defense expenditure stay up to date with recent significant capabilities will be affected. Faced with repeated intelligence failures, cross-border tensions in the form of Chinese and Pakistani intrusions, volatile atmosphere along the line of actual control and line of control, the pandemic has overtly exposed the lack of military preparedness of the Indian Army, especially when it was forced to cancel Ladakh military exercises with China. With China's Belt and Road Initiative guaranteeing economic leverage vis-a-vis infrastructure and connectivity building networks and supply chain integration in the South Asian region, the hegemonic rise of China has commanded political deference as a byproduct from India's immediate neighbors and has diluted the underlying importance of the SAARC project in fostering inter- and intra-regional diplomatic cooperation. A state of constant flux without structural predictability in the Asia Pacific, with a Chinese center of gravity in the recent past, has witnessed putative order building tendencies in the form of Chinese assertiveness that has been undeterred even by a devastating pandemic. With the Chinese aggressive behavior creating new power equations in the Asia Pacific, as exhibited in the Korean Peninsula, naval intrusions into Indonesian exclusive economic zone, South China Sea or East Asian crisis, the pandemic is bound to alter the security dynamics of regional stability in the South Asian region and accelerate these developments in the strategic realm. With the crippling SAARC initiative at the heart of which lies contentious Indo-Pakistan bilateral relationship, regional integration remains a utopian ideal due to practical constraints and grave geostrategic challenges. South Asia is essentially an integer and is meant to be ideally integrated by virtue of its historical, geographic, cultural, linguistic ties and civilizational commonalities. But the lack of focus or prioritizing on connectivity, totally beset with contradictions, have been further complicated by a disease of mass destruction. India's acute governmental mismanagement, deepening cross-cutting ties and political cleavages driven by prejudice, hostility and despair in the time of Corona has pushed India away from cross-border cooperation and robust diplomatic practices at the international theatre, as an inhospitable climate of insularity and dissonance has erected barriers, shut down doors of collaboration and friendship, and signaled the death of diplomatic engagement. The pandemic has also exposed the lack of emergency preparedness and the troublesome condition of India's public health infrastructure, as reflected in one of the lowest medical testing rates and alarmingly low investment in medical research, development, and infrastructural advancement. Following the pandemic and amidst the ongoing process of global economic slowdown, wherein major economies of the world are shrinking, contracting, suffering from acute global public debt crisis and demand crisis, dramatic decline in oil prices, skyrocketing unemployment, and economic uncertainty, there has been a major change in terms of massive structural damage on India's domestic economic architecture, financial institutions, and stock market, with massive negative impact on India's labor, supply chain, capital costs, job market, stalling of infrastructure and construction projects and financial transactions, halt in marketplace economy, and fall in government revenue, limiting the ability to provide stimulus packages. With a remarkable change in the overall demand for goods and services as a result of the devastation occurring to India's economic activities, labor-intensive industries have been hit the hardest. Apart from having dire consequences for business confidence, investment, lack of rent payments, and non-payment of debts to bank, it is increasingly evident that the immediate economic changes will shape the political agenda in the post-COVID world, and thus the creation of parallel financial global ecosystem that will diminish the structural disruptions, systematic bifurcation and fragmentation of the global financial architecture into America-dominated and China-dominated sphere is the need of the hour, especially from India's perspective, where negative growth rates are shrinking its economy to a 23.9% in the recent fiscal year. Further taking into consideration the menace of economic breakdowns with glaring examples of worst-hit nation states like India, the alarming condition can be ameliorated if the Keynesian concept of diminishing marginal propensity for consumption is taken into account and the government is proactively engaged in the enactment of counter-cyclical fiscal policies, creating public works, transfer payments, inject liquidity, and stimulate the demand from below by having a multiplier effect that will pull the economy out of recession. India's border conflict with China might push its foreign policy stance towards adopting an asymmetric response, wherein flexing India's naval might in the Indian Ocean naval space, deepening cooperation with other powerful liberal democracies, will deter Chinese aggression and bypass China's connectivity of oil and gas supplies to the Middle East. The Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, or the Quad, as an effective informal strategic forum between US, Japan, Australia, and India has strengthened its motivation by gaining traction in the face of Chinese belligerence, which will be crucial in shaping the geopolitical developments, and it must assume a strict military role to combat crude Chinese special tactics. As a highly significant maritime power, increased attention on the Indian Ocean naval space needs to be devoted with the expansion of India's foreign trade and booming economic potential, instead of just prioritizing, as per the historical record, on lengthy land borders with two nuclear power neighbors, China and Pakistan. Shifting the center of gravity to the relative importance of the sea, as China has started to make inroads into smaller South Asian nations for increasing its sphere of influence and preponderance of power, India must steadily intensify its military and diplomatic cooperation with Japan, France, US, and Australia in order to check Chinese aggression around the string of pearls in the Indo-Pacific. While resisting getting encircled, surrounded, and constricted strategically, India must ensure that it has viable strategic space and strategic freedom in an environment where conflicts are becoming increasingly hybrid, and the line of distinction between conventional notions of war and peace is getting blurred out. In this context, instead of politicizing violence as a tool of foreign policy, the recently acquired hawkish dimension to India's behavior in its neighborhood, as exhibited in the legitimization of surgical strikes as a tactical strategy against Pakistan, needs to be replaced with multiple instruments of track to diplomacy vis-a-vis its soft power apparatus. In order to contain Chinese supremacy in its neighborhood, as illustrated in the hugely significant power differentials between India and China, India must display willingness and pursue a change of attitude in improving its systemic facilities, resources, capabilities, and infrastructure to play a deterrence game with China instead of going for a 1:1 capability mix. By avoiding cognitive bias-driven platitudes in foreign policy decision-making, investing substantially on public health, human and health security, shedding its past aversions to alliances, rethinking, reevaluating strategic autonomy, developing multiple alignments, and pursuing a dynamic multi-track diplomacy, India can at least aspire to inject a ray of hope by adopting a more imaginative, teleological approach in international relations. To sum up, the constitutive normative principles of the de facto world order are in a state of irregularity, with an overarching trend of statism, nativism, illiberal populism, ultranationalist xenophobia, economic protectionism, competitive authoritarianism, undermining the forces of free trade-driven globalization, and restricting the political imagination of global actors to the monopolized ontological domination of the nation states. The pandemic has exposed the fragility of medical establishment and health infrastructure, accentuated divisions and dissensions in a vast area of dimensions, ranging from economy to politics, as a kind of perverse revenge of nature against the gross anthropocentric abuses made by mankind. The test for political legitimacy, democratic stability, governance and accountability, and global leadership has come to the forefront with the pandemic, and it can be concluded that by re-energizing the existing nature of global institutions, practices, values, and participation in a dynamic fashion, ensuring the diversification of supply chains by keeping the structures and agencies of global governance afloat and functioning to the greatest extent possible in fidelity with rule of law, multilateralism, and international cooperation, the radical alteration of the status quo into a degenerated bloody path can be avoided, and a strategic equilibrium can be achieved from India's perspective during the time of a debilitating pandemic and a Cold War 2.0 between US and China. Additionally, to conclude, international cooperation needs to be extended to a vast array of issue areas and dimensions, ranging from climate change or environmental protection to health and human security, to improving nuclear security by preventing horizontal and vertical nuclear proliferation, reforming the World Trade Organization and World Health Organization, creating a formal set of treaties, norms, and codes of conduct for government behavior in the cyberspace. Paradoxically, the great powers contestation for regional hegemony and influence will provide an incentive for collaboration, and the biggest challenge for the future global order will be to preserve the joint gains and benefits of an international cooperation in constructing a benign and beneficial world system. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Abhigyan Guha. Abhigyan, you are a PG student.
Yes, sir.
Very good. So, of course, you have taken very comprehensive and that microscopic approach insight about India's perspective. And sometimes I was feeling that it is not Abhigyan is speaking. I thought that it is like India's foreign minister is speaking and giving a very comprehensive and very diplomatic and bringing all things together, going all over the world, covering all the aspects from South Asia to Indo-Pacific to America and different aspects and all that. And finally, as a diplomat or as a politician used to do that, they do not take anywhere. So my point is there, you are a student. I think I feel it that you should, while you are making presentation, while you are making any kind of, I think that should be very, very microscopic rather than the macroscopic. You should have very focused, take one very focused topic and then you should come out with that. You had raised multiple issues, many issues from domestic political constructs where you have talked about the populism in politics, you talk about the majoritarian rules and then rule of law and how they are impacting the policy making, and that you have given very pessimistic approach about the economy and all that. I think very, very comprehensively you have covered all these aspects. And then you had also talk about the China, how the China and that you have to, India has to deal with China and the nuclear threat in the northern Himalaya, and then how India is approaching to the Indian Ocean. Of course, about Quad and all these aspects that you have covered in your paper. So I can't touch all these aspects that you have tried to brought all these aspects. But I would submit 2-3 very important points that you have raised. I think India is basically you can say that had been very India's foreign policy had been very reactionary in a say, not actionary but reactionary in a way that it is basically counterbalancing the emerging threats either from the social sector or from economic sector or from the geopolitical realities, like you have given example of China, and very categorically or very consciously dealing with the approaches of multi-alignment, as you have talked about the Quad, that why India is not joining very enthusiastically Quad, because India doesn't want to trap in the military alliances in a way to lose its strategic autonomy or to lose its independent foreign policy. India is more willing to have alliances for economic benefits. And for those, like I categorically said that India had come out with 4 policy options in the last many years, and that is following. Of course, India is emphasizing on its economic diplomacy or economic or trade relations with all over the world, either with the Indo-Pacific region or with China as well, with the Western world, or anywhere they are going, they are talking about trade and investment regimes and addressing. Of course, the second point, India is very consciously developing its strategic partnership, very consciously developing. It's not like you just join Quad and you counterbalance China in Indian Ocean or in Indo-Pacific. It's not that. India is having developing very conscious strategic partnership bilaterally with, and I think 37 countries India has cultivated strategic partnership. Third, that India had also come out with the organizational changes, that because we had made a single window to deal with the foreign policy issues rather than different ministries and dealing very separately. But most important aspect that you did not bring in your paper, that is that India has also been using its soft power as an instrument or advancing the foreign policy with the neighboring countries or with the extended neighbors and beyond that. So India is taking many measures to to advance its robust foreign policy approaches and trying to meet the domestic needs. For that, two more examples that you may have considered in your paper is that like India has come out with Project Mosam. Project Mosam is connecting with culturally with Indian Ocean states, and then Project Sagarmala, and how you are basically connecting with the Indian coastal states with the mainland one way, and then how you are approaching with the Indian Ocean state another way. So India had come out with many of the very good aspects. But of course, there are challenges from China. There are challenges from multi-alignment. There are challenges, economic challenges, and there are domestic problems and constraints about the economic resources and growth. So you had come out with many of the aspects, but I would still suggest that take the very focused one topic, and then you would be in better position to highlight. Now I invite next speaker is Miss Astha Chadda. Astha is going to speak on India's COVID-19 strategy and relations with Africa, implications for international relations in the Indian Ocean. Yes, Astha, you can go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon from Japan. Professor Sanjay Bharadwaj, thank you so much for that introduction. It lays the perfect foundation for my presentation. I'd like to just begin by thanking NICE and as well as Professor Shriesh, Amity University. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Yeah, I'm just going to share my screen now for my presentation. I hope it's visible.
Yes, very much.
Okay, thank you, Professor. So my topic is India's COVID-19 strategy and relations with Africa. I'm basically going to talk about how India has maintained its relations with Africa in the past in very brief, and then try and talk about how COVID-19 has kind of come up as an opportunity for India to strengthen its relations strategically and in a lot of other ways, with the African continent as a whole, and not just with individual nations in Africa, and not just with some elite in Africa. So just a quick background, about India-Africa relations. India and Africa together have a population of about 2.3 billion. So that is a large chunk of the world population. And there is a large Indian diaspora in Africa as well. It's about 3 million people. And India and Africa together account for close to $70 billion in bilateral trade. Indian soldiers also account for a large chunk of the US peacekeeping missions that are being held in Africa. So there are around 4,500 Indian soldiers there. India has already invested about $7.5 billion for investment in 40 different African countries. So the point of talking about all this is that India-Africa relations, they have shared a common legacy of whether it was anti-racial movement, or was it non-alignment movement, or even the anti-colonial movement. They have seen the whole era of colonialism and then come out of it, and now are trying to build their own economies and their own nationhood in a certain different way. But the main point is that both the nations, because of their shared culture and shared legacies, they have African continent as a whole, and a lot of different countries in Africa have shared good trade partnerships with India, such as Nigeria, South Africa, Ghana, etc. So Africa is a very, very important continent in the Indian Ocean. Why is it important to say that? Because when it comes to the US policy towards free and open Indo-Pacific, for them, the Indo-Pacific kind of stops, with half of the Indian Ocean that is mainly covering, half of the SARC, where close to Sri Lanka. And the other part, which is the Arabian Sea, is kind of neglected or left out. Whereas for Indian definition of the free and open Indo-Pacific, where it talks about an extended neighborhood, India has extended it to African West Coast. India has also extended it to the Gulf. So that is that is how India defines its inclusive Indo-Pacific policy, in which it sees a very crucial role for Africa, not just because of its strategic location on the map, but also because of the large amount of possibilities and capabilities that Africa can build and contribute to in the world development, and as well as to development in African countries. So one such initiative by India in the recent past was, along with Japan, they launched the Asia-Africa Growth Corridor. Although there has not been, it's relatively new. It was announced in 2017. The idea was not only to make it as a contesting, scheme of development for Africa, against the China-led BRI, but also to provide an alternative way to get quality infrastructure. That is how they were marketing it. Also, India-Africa Forum was, launched under the current government, and they basically launched it to prioritize African. For the first time, 54 African nations attended it. One was supposed to be held this year, however, due to the pandemic, it has been postponed to 2021. That being said, India has already, pledged 10 billion US dollars for line of credits for various, grant assistances in Africa. Some of them are for the infrastructure, the others are for Africa Health Fund. And then there has been a Pan-Africa e-network project where it's trying to, provide services through telecommunication links in 48 African nations. So the point here is that India's approach towards Africa has been less about, just connecting with the elite or supporting whatever is their political, status quo in that nature, but has also been in some part, as Professor Sanjay was earlier pointing out, to employ its soft power in the sense of, promotion of democracy, for instance, or some kind of to help with some kind of a cultural communication, cultural interaction, and also to push for development in the African continent from the grassroots, rather than just keeping it to a strategic military relationship. And hence, India planned 18 new missions in Africa, of which 9 are already functional. And in August 2020, which is last month, India announced that they aim to execute a free trade agreement for economic expansion in Africa. So what has been India's COVID-19 strategy towards Africa? Well, when the pandemic hit India in March, India was very quick with trying to provide, through its medical diplomacy, trying to provide medicines such as hydroxychloroquine, which at that point was an important drug, as well as providing PPE, and that was possible only because India, within 6 months, became the world's second largest producer of protective gear. So it was able to export those or send those to a lot of African nations. Then there have been some development partnerships which have been pledged, which would eventually play out, post-pandemic once things settle down. India has provided ITC trainings, which were especially aimed at training medical and health professionals in Africa. The idea was to not only connect, as I said, with the political establishment in Africa, but also to go down to the grassroots. India also sent across its own medical professionals, its own doctors, its own paramedics to Africa so as to assist them with the COVID-19 pandemic. And then, of course, in April, our foreign minister announced an Africa Focus Working Day, which meant that there would be interactions with a lot of African leaders on that particular day, so as to push for more dialogue, more development-based projects that could be taken up, once the pandemic could become a little bit hazed out in the world. So the whole point of strengthening a relationship with Africa during this pandemic has been, number one, India is a very important nation within the Indian Ocean, which is suffering from a lot of, a lot of angst and security threats on its border as well as in its maritime zone. So what Africa offers to India and what India can offer to Africa is a good example of a South-South cooperation, where they both can help each other, not just economically, not just culturally, but also politically, strategically, in military terms. Just to mention that India in the past 3 years or 2 years has launched a lot of has had a lot of active military exercises with Africa. One was with India, Brazil, and South Africa, which are the 3 BRICS nations, which was held in 2018 October. Then 3 months later, the Indian Chief of Staff went to Kenya and Tanzania, to talk about more such strategic partnerships, if possible, in the terms of military alliances or some kind of joint exercises. And then again 3 months later, in March 2019, there was another exercise held with Africa called AFINDEX 19, which was aimed more than trying to militarize the region. It was mainly aimed at humanitarian assistance. So India, in its even in its military cooperations or exercises with nations, has tried to keep it to a point that there is some kind of humanitarian aspect in it, and it provides more security and less of security threat to the nations around it. The second important thing for India to do when it comes to India's policy towards Africa is to clearly and categorically distinguish its relations with Africa from how Beijing conducts its relations with the African continent. That is because the Beijing model has mainly been of checkbook and donation diplomacy, whereas India has been kind of trying to, under the layers, focus on combating neo-colonial attitude of the bigger powers, by trying to help Africa with more humanitarian assistance, with more development projects, with more infrastructure projects. So that is how India can clearly, differentiate its policy from that of China, and can avoid this whole idea of comparing India and China in Africa, because they are not on comparable terms at all, whether it comes to the way they conduct their foreign policy, or the way they they hold their development assistance, or even the way they interact with the political elite in Africa. None of those things are same. That being said, it is also very different, in terms of capabilities. India is much less capable in terms of financial resources than China to assist Africa. Hence, it needs to employ a more of a differentiated policy towards Africa. Also, it's important that under the AAGC, which is the Asia-Africa Growth Corridor, India is trying to, instead of following the Chinese model of resource extraction, or the Beijing model of taking along its own labor, and employing those rather than using or the labor available in Africa. The India and Japan model is more focused on employing local labor and making this relationship with Africa as a relationship among equals, and not going into a more of a neo-colonial model of development. Again, for India, it is most crucial that it highlights the importance of partnership with African nations for mutual benefit, which is based on trust. Hence, after such a long and nice period of good relations it has had with South Africa and Nigeria, in 2020 August, again, India signed with Nigeria a pact for space exploration. Wherein India, more than the space, India is looking for going into the, AGVs, the automated guided vehicles line, and, assisting Africa in that aspect. And that is a big market for India if it is able to actually crack that deal. So, by using local capabilities, local capacities in Africa, and by making resilient Africa for Indian businesses, India can foster this mutual benefit, in the relationship, and can foster this trust at much greater level. It is not only to balance in some way China in the region, China being already very important in African development, but it is also to maintain an alternate route of development, for a continent such as Africa, which is not just there to be exploited for its resources. And that being said, Indian interpretation of Indo-Pacific and India's visibility in the geopolitically crucial region is again very important, and that can happen only if it maintains, continues to maintain this good momentum of its relationship with Africa. That is one, because Africa is very important for at least Indian Indo-Pacific strategy, where it talks about inclusiveness, and Indian inclusiveness cannot really become practical unless it makes Africa part of the whole, global development. Secondly, India is geopolitically important, so is Africa. However, India needs to show its visibility in the region. Rather than being more passive, it has to be more active, which it has started doing in the recent times. But the momentum keeps to be maintained, given the changing power equations constantly, especially during the pandemic. Also, the Quad Plus needs to kind of again take some speed. There had been talks about including Africa in those, not just Vietnam and some other nations, but also Africa. And I think India should stand by it. If it is really seriously committed to its relationship to Africa, India needs to stand by it and promote a closer relation with Africa in that sense. That would be all for my presentation. Thank you so much. Professor Sanjay, I could not hear you, sorry.
Okay. Is it okay?
Yes, thank you.
Unmute. Okay. Yes. So thank you very much for very focused approach that and very different topic that you have taken, that India's partnership or relations with African countries. And I think that need to be cultivated. You categorically mentioned, and there you have also mentioned that the volume of bilateral trade is about $70 billion. But the most important thing is that India's constructive engagement with the African countries are now, I can see is a big number, big in amount, around $7.5 billion investment. Indian investments are there, and around $10 billion that India has extended as line of credit. And I think it's a big engagement that India is having in African countries. But what most important aspect that you have raised about the diaspora community, that how the diaspora community can become instrumental in cultivating the relations between the two countries. And there, I think the use of soft power can become an instrumental to cultivate the diaspora community, as well as cultivate the African community, because we had historical relations from a Gandhian period. You can say that Gandhiji was there and he started struggling or fighting against the colonial masters or against the racial discriminations. So that kind of partnership that we have developed in the history could be developed in the present pandemic era, and to address the global concerns or concerns of pandemic and environmental issues and all that. But I would certainly would like to know that one aspect you touched very less, that is China, because India or any country, they are facing tough competition in Africa with China. And the Chinese investment, if you will say that Chinese investment, that has been largely criticized in recent past, that how they are exploiting their natural resources, how they are exploiting the mines and minerals of African countries for their benefits. So I would like to know, while the question answer would be there, that how do you find that what exactly the Chinese are doing, and where India should what type of competition India is facing with China in African countries, and which areas, like particularly I would say a part of minerals, and are there any possibilities of energy cooperation with African countries, that the two countries can come together? So thank you very much for your very academic and very focused presentation on India-Africa partnership in this COVID-19. Now I invite next speaker, Sandhya Rani. Sandhya Rani is, I think, South Asia. Yes, I can see you. Sandhya Rani, she is going to speak on multilateralism in Nepal, foreign policy, need of the hour in the post-COVID-19 Asia. Please, Sandhya, you can speak on multilateralism in Nepal's foreign policy.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
I would like to share this screen.
Yeah, your voice is very less. Be a little loud.
Sure, sure. Am I on? Am I audible now?
Yes, you have to. You have to come more closer. Yes.
So, first of all, I would like to thank to Amity University and then NICE and then Mulya Foundation for giving this opportunity and to you, sir, for chairing this session. So, I would share my screen. Yes, that's it. Yeah. So I'll start with introduction. It's when the pandemic became severe, the first reaction of the nations was to shut their borders activities. The countries adopted a protectionist attitude towards the pandemic. But the question is it possible to protect unilaterally by this pandemic in this way? And this question needs to be answered, especially in the context of Asia, where the two biggest economies, that is China and India, are facing each other at their borders. Also, we look at the scenario that exists and which had created an uncomfortable situation between India and China when the Chinese troops in eastern Ladakh area killed 20 soldiers in a violent face-off in the mid-June. Then we look at Nepal. On the other side, there is territorial claim action going on. What happened, that is regarding Limpi, Adura, Kalpani and Lipu Lake. So looking at this scenario, we can say that in this integrated world, the uncoordinated unilateral responses will not help to overcome the economic depression of this pandemic. So for this reason, in order to show how much the South Asian countries are affected by this, I have shown a graph below of the South Asian countries, where you can see that Afghanistan, Nepal's numbers, there are a number of cases infected 5-10 days before, which has increased by this time more. And then in the last 3 columns, I have put China and USA also, where you can say that even being the bigger economies, number 1 and number 2, they have also been not left by this pandemic. So no matter big or small, this pandemic has made everyone to stand in one line. So coming from that point, we can see that Nepal is one of the stands nowhere when we look at its population or its area or its economy. So I have tried to relate it, that how its foreign policy have been affected being in South Asia, and how it is behaving with the 2 Asian giant neighbors, that is we say one as rising, that is China, and the other we say the emerging, it is India. So regarding that, when Nepal's foreign policy, when we see its diplomatic relations goes back to 1947 with the India-Nepal Treaty of Peace and Friendship, which was signed in 1950. And we see that with India, Nepal has a long open porous border, and which helps in promoting people-to-people trade also, and through various agreements also. And then it has, we can see that 6 lakhs are Indian national in Nepal, and a lot more, that is around 10,000, 10 crores, 10 lakhs Nepalese in India, which makes a people-to-people contact. So you can see that how closer the Nepal's foreign policy or the relation goes with India. And then comes the China, which also has this porous border divided by these Himalayas. So China invests heavily in Nepal to enhance its connectivity and infrastructure to have an influential base there. And then also at present, China is the largest source of foreign direct investment there. And tourism, one of the areas like is promoted by Chinese tourists, that is accounts for 150,000 Chinese tourists in 2018. And for that reason, Nepal waived visa fees since 2016. And the Prime Minister KP Oli have signed transit and transport agreement in 2016 with China, and is quite an active participant of BRI, of which under this BRI, one initiative I have shared below. So how does Nepal tries to put the policies which it's following with Nepal or China? It says like the Nepal is focusing on economic development and prosperity for journey towards happy Nepali, prosperous Nepali, balanced foreign policy to India and China in order to have investment in Nepal, and neighborhood policy for mutual benefit. So this is what the Nepal's stand is regarding its foreign policy with Nepal, India and China. But the problem lies that when I have under this BRI route, I have mentioned this map which shows that from Shigatse, the train route you can see, it's till Rasuvagdi in Nepal, and then the train route comes to Birganj and wanted to come till this Raxol. So the issue here lies here is that it's this Indian territory, and then when we have porous border with Nepal, so how come it's like if Nepal initiates this trade railway track route, somewhere the geostrategically it will influence the security of India, and for this reason India wants to have most of the time try to show its influencing Nepal, or have tried to keep away China from Nepal for its security reasons. And then I come to so Nepal and moves towards India and China in order to promote its economy, trade and financial status of its citizens. And for this reason, we have BIMSTEC and SAARC, where it is a member of these organizations, of these institutions. So we look at BIMSTEC then, that it accounts for 1.5 billion people and comprises of almost 22% of the globe. And it accounts for 3 trillion gross domestic product. When this region covers Bay of Bengal, which is responsible for 25% of global trade and 70% of China's energy imports. So I have mentioned this point because in order to how this can be helpful for Nepal, that in this pandemic situation, that we know that most of the time the free trade area is still not a progressive one. The talk is going on in these institutions. So at this time, we need to make this swift and have a proper speed. So in order to gain the profit by saving time and energy and various other uh, products. So I have mentioned areas of cooperation where certainly these all are hampered by this pandemic. So there are some areas that will be needed to enhance the economy and trade, and there are some areas which can't be done in a short span of time. So I'll not go in that. And then it has been active. BIMSTEC have been active in recent
you have 2 minutes.
times.
2 minutes.
Yes, sir. It's August 2020 where we take this forward cooperation, boosting initiatives for the region of India-Bangladesh connectivity, and where power projects were discussed to promote. So this will enhance the whole of the area. Then I have put ASEAN here because during this pandemic, this is how it has tried to handle this region in order to get less effective. What it did is, I have shown the percentage here that it has, that is Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam have eliminated the 90% of tariffs. And then the other countries, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Philippines have almost eliminated by 99% of the tariffs, which helps in their intra-regional tariffs, promoting their intra-regional trade actually. And throughout multilateral benefit, electronics from Malaysia, I have mentioned this point in order to suggest that what India or Thailand or Nepal can get from these multilateral initiatives, because each country have got expertise in something in these particular areas. And then what they did was enhance free, open, transparent, and sharing information, data, and expertise. So in the coming days, this is what every SAARC country will need. So we can take an example from this, and then I'll go to the next slide. Revival of SAARC for multilateralism has come in the picture because this is the area which holds 44% of world's poor population, hence trade, connectivity, and facility is required. And one of the reviving steps by SAARC during this pandemic is the emergency fund created in order to help the country members and the population residing there. In the very beginning, 14-member medical team was sent to Maldives, which was a positive initiative, and SAARC Secretariat consisting of various sectors and departments which have been dormant for this many decades, that is 35 years. So the institution exists, and we should not say that let it get over or it is a failed institution. So only we have to make initiative in order to make it successful. And then contributions I have mentioned by the SAARC countries, and lack of implementation and integration in SAARC countries is the reasons I have mentioned, few of them. Corruption and private sector as a major role can do, and multilateral actions to be taken. That is, Nepal hosts SAARC Tuberculosis and HIV AIDS Center. It was established with the vision of AIDS-free generation region. It has been working for prevention and control of TB since 1994. So this point I have made because at this pandemic time, be it India or China, they have to take the lead in order to bring out Nepal from this COVID pandemic situation. And government institutions must provide food with medicines, open free trade, keeping the borders open for restrictions only. That's the other point. And according to this Community for Development Policy, which is a subsidiary body of.
I think you please bind up. You
yes,
take
yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. I think you want to. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for your nice presentation on multilateralism in Nepal's foreign policy. Of course, India and Nepal had come together in recent past to develop a multilateral approach of development, particularly the initiatives taken by between the two countries to develop a sub-regional cooperation among South Asian Eastern South Asian sub-region had been appreciated, like particular BBIN project, and BIMSTEC is another organizations that the two countries is coming together. But most importantly, that in the SAARC summit in 1916, where Modi has proposed about power corridor, and a SAARC satellite was also welcomed by two countries. This multilateralism, I think, between the two countries has been generated while Manmohan Singh has signed a framework agreement with Bangladesh, where it was told that the Bangladesh would provide India a transit to northeastern states, and India would provide Bangladesh to have access to Bhutan and Nepal. And let the Bhutan and Nepal also utilize India and Bangladesh land to reach to Mongla and Paira ports. So this kind of multilateral approach that all the 3, 4, 5 countries countries would come together to develop a developmental ties. So thank you very much for your very enlightening paper on multilateralism. Now I request, I think it is the last speaker. It is Adil Qayyum Malla. Adil Qayyum Malla is speaking on changing geopolitical landscape in South Asia, a post-COVID scenario. Are you there, Adil?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I am there.
Go ahead. Now, floor is with you.
Thank you very much, Professor. It's an honor to share the digital platform with you. So, actually, I had to shift from my laptop to cell phone because of some network problems here in Kashmir. So, I have my fingers crossed that this works for me. And I will straight away share my screen. Sir, I have titled my paper that is changing geopolitical landscape in South Asia, opposed to COVID-19 scenario. And I will make sure that my PPT is visible to you, but without wasting much time, I think I should carry on at the same time. So
Adil, PPT is not visible, but you can go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. So recently we have had voices from different corners of academia that the era of globalization or open borders and global value chains is severely under pressure. The populism, the protectionism, and climate change have all challenged the economic globalization. And we all know that the COVID-19 pandemic has presented as a latest challenge as far as the era of globalization is concerned. So when we have a look, when we have a cursory glance at what kind of shift this COVID-19 pandemic can pose in South Asia as far as the shifting balance of power or shifting geopolitics is concerned. So there are 3 scenarios which could help us grasp the potential long-term impact of the pandemic. The first is that the model of economic growth based on economic globalization has faced challenges in the recent years. Environmental groups, labor unions, and populists have unleashed severe criticism on free trade globalization for many reasons. And there were voices from different corners that one of the reasons for the wide world spread COVID-19 has been free trade or free travel, I'm sorry. So the pressures on globalization rose further as protectionist measures increased worldwide. So as per the WTO status, between October 2018 and 2019, the World Trade Organization recorded 102 new trade restrictive measures, covering USD 7,000 billion of trade flows. And the US Commerce Department, for example, has added Chinese companies such as Huawei Technologies Co. Limited and ZTE to its entity list, a blacklist banning US companies from supplying the two Chinese telecom giants without the US government approval. So how this trade war between the US and China is shifting towards the South Asia. And when we talk about South Asia, at the moment, there are two important players on the scene. We have got China, an aggressive and growing China, and on the other side, we have got India. I'm not undermining the importance of all the other nations there, but India and China are at the moment locked in a stalemate, and a clash high in the Himalayas has been the latest, or we can say the recent skirmishes in the Galwan Valley have really given us the signal that how China goes on with its ambitions of being the new global hegemon. The larger factor which shapes the boundary tensions in the dramatic transformation in relative power of China and India. The sense of rough parity between the two nations in the 1980s has now turned into a huge gap. And China's current GDP is at USD 15 trillion. To be exact, it is 14.4 trillion USD and is nearly 5 times that of India, which is at USD 3 trillion. And China's military expenditure of USD 260 million is nearly 4 times larger than India, which is at USD 71 billion. So, what will this mean for South Asia in the coming years? So, if we have a look at that at the end of 2019, we were not having that the global order might face an imminent, potentially transformative shock. But now, almost 9 months into 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic has shattered global health security, devastated the world economy, and accelerated great power rivalry. And I would love to quote French Minister of Economy and Finance, Bruno Le Maire, who viewed the pandemic as a game changer as far as Chinese hegemonic stance is concerned. I quote him, as the outbreak reveals an irresponsible and unreasonable reliance on Chinese suppliers and expresses the vulnerability of complex international supply chain. So, having a look at how India is going on with the trade war which was ushered in by United States in China, that has also entered South Asia, and we all know what happened in the aftermath of Galwan skirmishes. We saw that in the first place we were having 59 Chinese apps being banned, and the list went on to 118. And in addition to it, while India and China are in a dialogue to restore the status quo ante, India has initiated a range of economic measures aimed at Chinese firms to make it difficult for them to access the Indian markets. And clearly, New Delhi is indicating that it will not continue trade and investment relations as normal if China does not agree to return to the status quo of April 2020. So, India suspects that China is routing goods to India through their common trading partners in the South Asia under the SAFTA Agreement, and by taking advantage of bilateral pacts with Singapore, Japan, South Korea, and Sri Lanka. So what does this mean for South Asia as far as that transition is concerned? Having a look at the Chinese ambitions in South Asia, we saw that recently China has landed a loan of 1 billion to Bangladesh for the construction of its Teesta barrage project. We also saw how much ambitious China is with its investments in Nepal, how it has taken over lease the Hambantota port in Sri Lanka for a 99-year period, and how it is trying to do away with the Gwadar port in Karachi, which is under the
So you're not audible.
He might have.
Hello.
Yes, Adil. Right now you are audible. Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, sir. So we all know how China is trying to initiate, or how China is trying to get all the smaller South Asian countries under its Belt and Road Initiative. But before going further, I think it will be important to make an argument which is regarding the current economy the Indian state is in. We all know that unfortunately at the moment, India is not in the best stretcher as far as its economy is concerned. But on the other hand, China is the only economy which is growing. So there has been sizable investments or aid diplomacy being initiated by China in order to align the weaker South Asian states like Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, etc. So it is likely on cards that China will try to bail out these weaker economies out of the corona pandemic crisis. And there are all the chances in the world that this will shift, if not in a decisive way, but this will shift that balance of power in favor of China as far as South Asia is concerned. So I think I should draw your attention towards one of the important matters, which in 2017, the Parliamentary Standing Committee on External Affairs in India noted that there has been a sizable reduction in aid and loans to countries in our immediate neighborhood, such as Maldives, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, and Bangladesh. And the committee contended that the quantum of aid to a country under this head is viewed as a reflection of India's diplomatic engagement with its immediate and extended neighborhood. So if we try to unpack these events, we come to the conclusion, not in a decisive way, but we come to a conclusion that India may be on the receiving end when it comes to reshaping the geopolitical and geo-economic structure of South Asia in the post-COVID-19 scenario. Sir, am I having some time, 5 minutes or so?
Sanjay sir, you're on mute. Please unmute yourself.
Only 2 minutes. I think 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, sir. So, what this coronavirus pandemic, what can we visualize, what can we witness in South Asia in the aftermath of COVID-19 pandemic? We can see that the shift there recently, if we have a look at that, US foreign policy has shifted as far as the South Asia has concerned. From the last 2 decades, we see that US has entirely been basing its foreign policy and strategies on wars in the Middle East, fortifying Israel. It has implemented policy in South Asia that have been very much, that have not yielded much. The former president, Barack Obama's pivot to Asia or Asia-Pacific rebalancing did not work. Neither did it fortify ties with China, nor did it help the Middle East. And then came Donald Trump's administration and his quadrilateral security dialogue, commonly known as the Quad. This is an alliance of 4 nations, and that is Australia, US, Japan, and India. And the essential philosophy behind Quad was establishing a tangible counterbalance to China's remarkable growth and dynamism. So the Trump administration, for obvious reasons, did not like the idea of an Asia dominated by an ambitious China, pushing forward with its BRI and its constructed South Asia islands. The US felt that trade with China was fine, but there was always the looming that China's ever-growing presence would lead to its domination of the region. Thus, a secure and safe Asia needed to have a counterbalance to China. Therefore, the Quad coordinated a security strategy, particularly in the maritime sphere. This led to the US thinking that India, with the world's fifth largest industrial power, must be befriended and supported heavily. So the Trump administration's logic was that to prop up India as a counterbalancing act to China will lead to the Indian domination over the smaller South Asian nation.
To interrupt, Adilji. I'm very sorry to interrupt because we are running out of time. So kindly.
Sir, 1 minute. I will finish it up. 1 minute only.
Okay, go
Thank
ahead.
you very much. So I would like to sum it up. I would like to sum it up in a minute or so, that looking at the way that China and Pakistan are coming closer to each other, and we are seeing a consequent friendship between United States and India, it looks likely on cards that the future in South Asia will be transformed into a strategic quadrilateral, where US and India will be again having the next part. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your wonderful presentations. You had raised many questions and many ideas. So it is really a very academic presentation. You categorically mentioned about how to cope with the rise of China. That is the first question that you have raised, that how to cope with the rise of China. Either India should cultivate United States to counterbalance China into Asia Pacific region or Indo-Pacific region, or India should develop a robust neighborhood policy or cultivate the neighboring countries to have very firm approach to counterbalance China into South Asia. Of course, China and India had basically 4 policy dynamics. One is that the 2 countries, they believed from 1988, while Rajiv Gandhi visited to China, that we will engage ourselves in economic and political issues. And I think we had engaged ourselves enough that the 2 countries' trade has reached more than $90 billion in recent past. So you can say that we had very good apex level of political exchange and dialogues and discussions and economic engagement, investment between the 2 countries. And it was an understanding that we will maintain the status quo on border. That the Chinese in the past, from 2013 onward, started breaching the trust what they had promised us in 1988 or 1990, that we will maintain the status quo, and the Chinese have started building infrastructure on border areas and started invading in Indian territory. That has irritated India, and Indian policymaker has become very firm, very strong about that there is need to counterbalance or balance China into South Asia as well as in its periphery as well. So India started cultivating closer relations with Japan, with South Korea, with Philippines, with Vietnam, Myanmar, Mongolia, all these countries to counterbalance China within its periphery and stop China to coming South Asia. Of course, the 4th policy we had adopted, that we try to contain China military as well, as China has threat to the northern front. We had developed a world-class naval force. We had developed Andaman Nicobar as a stable base for aircraft for missiles and all that, so that you can create a Malacca dilemma before Chinese if China has a threat to the northern Himalayan region. So we had positively developed a policy that was based on engagement, status quo, balance of power, and containment. So you have categorically mentioned about the Chinese policies in South Asia, where CPEC, CMAC, and BCIM are also part of that, and how China is developing infrastructure or making a string of pearl policy in South Asian countries. Of course, India, let me make 3 more submissions, then I will open for question answer. That India has very categorically try to develop cultivate the domestic constituents, as the other states also in the South Asian countries. Because once you are discussing the foreign policy of any country, any state, you need to understand what are the social constituencies. As I said, in the South Asian countries, there are three clear-cut social constituencies are visible in all the countries, including Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, that there are three sections of the people, or three thought process in these countries. One is the liberal, they believe in the historical ties, they believe in the civilizational affinities, they believe that we're part of common ecological organic system, and we should develop, come together. We are one race, one culture, people. So we should have a cordial ties, cooperative ties with each other. But there are another sections of the society in these South Asian countries is the radical sections. They developed their policies based on anti-Indianism, or or cultivate or brings extra regional powers in the region, so that they can have better enjoyment of power, or they can secure their regime being ruled in their country. So the radical forces, they develop the policy of keeping India factor in their approach, anti-Indianism on all that. And the third approach is the realist approach. That is I think the young generations, what is the thought of the generation today. They are not looking what the radicals and what the reals are thinking. They are looking in more realistic perspective. They are aligning, all the South Asian countries are aligning with the forces where they can maximize their profit, where they can maximize their economic benefits, where they can maximize their employment and reduce the poverty. So what if the opportunities are with China, they are aligning with China. If the opportunities are with India, they are aligning with India. Or the opportunities are with the United States, they are aligning with the United States. So that the realist, basically that realist forces or generation or young generations are dominating the discourse in South Asia in its foreign policy making. And they're the old classes of radicalism and liberalism are on the back seat today. So I think we should understand the foreign policy of India or foreign policy of Nepal in this prism, that how the young generations are looking forward to cooperate with each other. I think India had come out with very robust foreign policy to answer all these questions raised by different speakers. But from domestic front also, that we try to develop a self-reliant India approach. There we are trying to develop and cultivate the resources within the country. We are trying to cultivate the human capital within the countries, and we try to make a single window system so that the country can prosper, can economically sustain itself. The second, that also to protect its border, it has adopted a soft power approach as well as hard power approach. In the hard power approach, you can see that India had believed in a policy of or deterrence by punishment or a denial strategy, so that you can counterbalance the threats from fundamentalists, the terrorists and insurgents groups, to make a peaceful and stable India, so that you can have more economic opportunities for the investors all over the world. The second policy that India tried to cultivate the neighboring countries and made a significant shift in the policy, foreign policy, you can say from the Gujarat Doctrine itself, from reciprocity to non-reciprocity, that we had tried to develop relations with the neighboring countries based on non-reciprocity. We tried to develop relations with the neighboring countries on the multilateral framework that I already talked about, the multilateralism, how Indian foreign policy had developed on water resource management, on energy resource management, on satellite or science technology and all that, and in connectivity issues as well. Third very important aspect that India had come out with, that we developed a constructive unilateralism, that we started helping the neighboring countries. That one speaker has talked that India has given largest line of credit to any country, that is Bangladesh, about $8 billion. India has given line of credit to Nepal, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Afghanistan, all these countries, so that they can develop together, we can develop a developmental board. And the fourth, India's foreign policy shift was categorically, that has been seen, that we had developed a policy of resource nationalism, instead of resource nationalism, we started resource sharing. Let the neighboring countries also take the leverage of India's economic development or India's land for its access to resources, either in Bhutan or Nepal or in Bangladesh or sea routes. So that kind of approach, a positive approach India had adopted in the foreign policy, to have a robust foreign policy so that the neighboring countries can come and join the developmental boat of India. At international level also, to counterbalance China or to cope with the rise of China, or to have a very equidistant policy with the United States, India had started cultivating the Indo-Pacific region under Act East policy in recent past, where the connectivity, culture, and commercial ties with these countries had become instrumental, and India and the Southeast Asian countries have developed around $80 billion bilateral trades between the two countries, and investments and energy cooperation between these two regions has also increased. India had also cultivated the West Asian countries, or Saudi Arabia, UAE, and you can see their stand on Kashmir issue. You can see their stand on India's policy, other policy issues. They had been very supportive in recent past. India had also cultivated United States in a way that we can maintain our strategic autonomy and independent foreign policy. So in taking this holistic approach and keeping these all the papers of geopolitics, foreign policy, multilateralism, and this pandemic, I think India is in this entire session, India was the center of the discussions, where India had categorically come out with many of the issues and challenges are coming before us on pandemic. So thank you very much. Now I would open it for the question answer. Who will ask the question? Siris? Yes, there are questions in the chat box.
Anchor will read out, sir, the question, and Dr. Bega, please wait. Anchor will read out, sir. So I am requesting to the anchor, just take 1 or 2, 3 questions which is quite relevant, and just share the question to the presenters.
Maybe
one more humble request to all presenters. We are actually running out of the time because the second session is about to start. So very precisely, we are expecting the answers.
Can I answer in a very quick way?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
There are 2 questions. I think they are interrelated questions. A student has asked about the comparison of Turkish and Indian media. To be honest, I don't have a very detailed insight about the all of the structure of the Indian media, but I can say that in both countries, the media ownership plays a key role in shaping the relationship between the political actors and the media actors. Both in Turkey and India, there are some big corporations and they own the media sector, but also there, on the other hand, they are dependent on the political authority for their financial resources. So they are not acting in an independent way. On the other hand, before the elections, like in your, I made the reference to Indian head of the government. Also in Turkey, before the election time, the politicians say that media must be free. We will do anything in order to make the environment in a free way for the media actors. But again, this changes after some elections. If there is an economic problem, or if there is some political instability, the government generally tend to put some restrictions on the media in order to consolidate its power. I think these are similar.
Dr. Burak, I think every speaker should have 2 minutes to answer whatever the questions.
But I want to put an end to my sentence, if you let me. Also, as a final remark, I can say that in both countries there are imprisoned journalists. The students can have a look at the website of the Committee of Protection for the Journalists. It is the Committee to Protect Journalists. If this MA students has a look at the webpage of the Committee to Protect Journalists, CPJ, I can write it on chat.
We do not have much time. We do not have much time.
I finished my sentence. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. I think 2 minutes each speaker.
Okay.
So the next
Asta.
question is for Aditi Priya.
Yeah.
Food security issues in South Asia.
No, don't read.
I'll just answer myself. Yes. So yes, pandemic is much older than the security studies debate. Yeah, right. But this is what I have tried to put in my submission, that security studies should focus more upon non-traditional security studies, in which obviously all types of threat, pandemic, or any other threats of non-traditional security threat would come. First thing. Second thing, the question has been asked about food security issues in South Asia are different. See, if you look upon the details of each and every country, obviously the issue will differ. But I have taken a holistic approach where I have taken tried to answer each and every issues taken together, because it isn't possible to discuss all the issues separately for each country. So that's why, yes, issues are different from India, but in my research paper I have tried to put all of them together. Thank you so much.
Yes. Now, Asta.
Thank you so much, Professor. I'll just quickly talk about, because somebody was asking about China and India, and Professor, you also raised a question about the same. But India needs to have a very comprehensive policy towards Africa for two main reasons. One is because of Chinese presence in Africa in the infrastructure and economic development. Second, because of the Chinese presence in the Indian Ocean region. Now, India's policy towards Africa, I mean, you know, when you talk about mainly economics here, it's got several parts. One is infrastructure, then trade. Well, China ranks first, you know, it is the highest trade or biggest trade partner for Africa. India is the third. China is the biggest investor in Africa. India is much lesser because of its resource constraints. Now the point is energy. Where India can, how India can, you know, get an edge over China is that although China has invested a lot in Africa in the infrastructure projects, in their energy projects, the problem China is facing is the problem of credibility. That probably India can play to its strengths and try and explore more alternative sources of energy for Africa. You know, and one such alliance it has already begun is the ISA, the International Solar Alliance, which means India will not necessarily need to contribute all its resources to Africa, you know, to find out alternative or non-conventional uses of energy, resources of energy. However, it can work together with the other nations in Africa to build them, you know, which will be in a way helpful to India to for India to kind of overcome its resource constraint, as well as help India to maintain its visibility in Africa. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor.
I'm done. Thank you very much, all.
Okay, let me formally thank you so much, sir. I'm really sorry to interrupt because we are running really late of time, and I would request all of you to stay back, and after the session we can continue to have a discussion after the next technical session, if it is possible for all the presenters, and of course yourself also. It would be really my pleasure if you could stay back.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
all.
Thank you, sir.
I'm very thankful to you, sir. Thank you.